respect, bravery, honesty, humility, truth, and wisdom, and love.
We can limit it to Canada if we wish, but I think we have to look at it in the context of this world, because all of us are more and more aware now of the impact on Mother Earth and the globe, and the impacts of colonization have been devastating.
Well, first of all, it was oppression. Now, when you're put on reserves and you're said that, well, you can't really hunt and fish as much, and then we were Christianized, then we add education into the mix. So then our people were educated, and in education, the only real premise of education is that you become part of society, that you buy into capitalism, that you are part of the machine, that you make a wage, and money sustains you now, as opposed to the Mother Earth.
Our future generations are in devastating need of to understand who they are, that they're not forgotten people. The lack of nurturing, the lack of talking, the lack of guidance, the lack of the knowledge of our traditions to pass on to our next generation. They used to have rites of passages for children, for young ladies to go in from infancy to womanhood, and for young men to go from infancy to manhood. We had the elders, the faith keepers, take care of them and show them what it is to go through that passage, to understand who they are and their roles as adults. We don't have those people today. We're a sparse number of people who really studied what the true meaning of our culture is about.
Well, then we had to be in a melting pot with the First Nations and Métis in order to have our rights recognized in the Constitution. But before that, there was really no need to be in a melting pot with other cultures blending, and really have weakened the social fabric of Inuit life. The spirituality and lifestyle, all these things were very badly weakened with something that really didn't replace what's important for us to know.
When alcohol was introduced, I think it was introduced after or during maybe the epidemics, and the people found that it was a painkiller. You would be literally numb. You know, the pain of your body experiencing those losses. Like, numbness is numbness, whether it be of the mind, the body, or the spirit. Numbness is welcome when you're in a great deal of pain. Some of those things, I honestly understand how people came to want them.
In this Indian Act, it's still in force today, but like I said, no Indian okayed that one. That's when you get rid of all the hereditary chiefs and vote in a young person. And he can only stay in there for 2 years. And this has been since in the 40s and 50s. And so you get this new person in, and just by the time he gets to know what he's supposed to be doing, it's time for him to get out, you know. So can you imagine from 45 to 50 until today, how many like piles and piles and piles of paperwork, a total confusion of papers that they're doing. So because the government wants our people to govern each other the way they govern the whole land, and that's not the way we govern.
To me, 150 years of that, you know, of not being welcome in places in your own land, that somebody had the right to tell you you're not allowed to be here. And they could be 15 years old and be telling you that, and have the right to call the police and have you hauled away. That if you were in town without the right papers, signed off by some Indian agent, that you were subject to arrest. Or if you were caught drinking, you know, I was not surprised at the way Indians drank a bottle of wine. I mean, basically they guzzled it, and that was to avoid arrest. I believe it was in 1967 that my mother, in response to the women who challenged the Indian Act, Section 12B, where Indian women lost their status, when they married somebody who was not Indian. And I remember reading that. That was my summer reading. No, Karen, it's from my mother. She hands me the Indian Act and she said, know this, understand this, because it affects you from the day you were born. And so that was her instruction. And so I read it. And I realized that as a woman, if I married somebody, it was going to affect the rest of my life. Up to and including where I was allowed to be buried.
We lost our land. We lost our identification. And I know for a fact that we have 2,700 members that identify themselves as Métis in Georgian Bay. And there's a lot more that don't identify themselves. But I know the people landed, they had nowhere to go. And some people got lucky and got Crown land. I know my grandfather did on my dad's side. But Crown land was something you could never sell. It had to be passed down through the generations.
You know, we had rallies and stuff and going on in the city and everything back in the 70s. And actually I was part of the AIM movement. And that made me feel good, and just to stand up for our people. I didn't go to the more militant stuff because I felt that was wrong. Like putting my life in jeopardy at the same time, I didn't want to do that. I would rather fight physically. That movement really helped me because at that time the woman spoke up, where are the men? Then the men stood up. And I was ready to defend the women. And I still will today. And that made me feel like something, because in this part of the world, in the eastern part of Canada, the Anishinaabe men were the first to be affected by change, because they couldn't hunt, even though I'm not a fisherman or a hunter, but to help my brothers in achieving that was good. And it's still not settled yet.